subscribe, so whatever you say is going out to millions of viewers.
That's good.
Thanks everyone again for coming to another Node.js meetup. This is pretty much a JavaScript meetup because I don't think there's any topics on Node unless Jamie's going to surprise us. No, it's all JavaScript. So apologies if you came expecting Node. Got two talks. You probably know what they are. Emoji by Michael Spreen and Jamie Wilson's going to talk on D3 and React. We've got one awesome sponsor this time. So Catalyst has kicked in to help out by beers and pizza. So a big shout out to Catalyst. Big shout out to Jamie for hosting us here. A few minor things we need to go over is the emergency exit point is down the bottom foyer area out of that car park. I think, don't quote me. Please sign out before you leave. Gareth will get in a lot of trouble if you don't all sign out. So don't annoy him. He's been wonderful enough to let us all in the door. So thanks. I'll let Marcus kick off.
I'd also like to preface this is about Node and not other stuff with this is kind of about emojis and JavaScript, but only like a little bit. But you'll forget that. So so I had this really stupid idea. I was like trying to get my GitHub green squares, and I was like, oh, I'll do a program, and all it does is console log an emoji. So it's like really anyways, but it didn't work, and I was like, maybe I'm just a really bad developer or something. Has anyone used Hyperterm? It's a terminal that runs purely on JavaScript and all that through. Yeah, I was using that, and that doesn't render emojis very well. So that was the entire thing that started me on this talk. So this whole thing is based off the fact that I was wrong about something. I just thought that was kind of funny. So it ended up looking more like this. Search for hot dog. It's not one word. You'll just get the wrong thing. It's also not about that. It's just let's learn Unicode. And it's kind of about Node, but we'll get to that. But I think it's really useful to know, actually. So you might get some stuff out of this. So if you want to use emojis, easier way than what I'm telling you is just go to npm and install it. But I saw this too, and I was like, well, this exists implies there's a problem here. So what's the problem? And no one talks about it because it's already done for you. So the question is, how do emojis work? And also, what are they? Are they like an image or something? I mean, it sounds silly to say that, but if you don't think about it, well, they all work, and somehow they work across all the phones. If I send you to your Android phone an emoji and I've got an iPhone, they know what I've sent, so there must be some sort of carrier, some sort of talk between the companies. So an emoji on a base level, not an emoticon, that's also a word you'll come across. They're two different things. Not to be pedantic. So they're an easy way to communicate an idea. I could say, wow, I'm really happy, but I'm also kind of embarrassed. Or I could just point to this. Or I could say, well, I wouldn't say I'm dying, I need help, but you get the idea. And it's comprised of two words, like a lot of Japanese stuff is. Also, emojis were the Tears of Joy emoji was the Oxford Word of the Year 2015. But considering the previous runners-up, we had vape and selfie, so that doesn't inspire much confidence anyway. Also, they're doing a movie. That's good. Don't know anything about it. They haven't talked about it, and it'll probably never come out. But that's not going to answer my technical level questions, because I just want to spend hours and figure out what the hell's going on. And we'll get into the ECMAScript spec as well. Don't worry if you were hoping we wouldn't. So this guy made the first emoji. Well, I mean, they say he made the first one. I don't know if he actually did. He could have been in a team. But he worked at NTT Docomo. His name was, I'm going to butcher this, Sigataka Kurita. And around 1998 to 1999, he made the first emoji, and it was for this platform, the iMode mobile platform. I guess it was around the time where they just had to make some weird feature set that no one else had, and that was the selling point. He said he took inspiration from things like weather forecasts, which use symbols, Chinese characters, street signs, Japanese manga, and they were all, there was 172 of them, a few more than Pokemon. There were 12 by 12 pixel emojis, and they were used to make communication simpler, which, before, it's easy to say I'm crying or whatever is in that image. So 17, 18 years later, emojis are everywhere. They're on the talk that he signed up to. And somehow your browser knows what that is. And yeah, so first we need to learn about ASCII. And this is where everything could go horribly wrong because I'm going to run something outside of Keynote. So I should ask, does anyone know what ASCII is? Like, do you actually know? You've heard the term probably. Do you actually know what it is? You probably don't need to watch this. So there's a program called ASCII. That's very handy. And these are all the ASCII characters. Sure. It doesn't go any bigger than that. Yeah. So you start off with all your control codes. These are things that, like if you put your terminal into a mode where I press A and A comes out, wait, no, that's a terminal, but if you press escape, for example, that's a control character. There is no symbol associated with it. Same with all these, like there's no null symbol. And then you get onto all your other symbols that you use that have an output, like exclamation mark or parenthesis, blah, blah, blah. And then you have your numbers and you have all of your letters and lowercase as well. And there was, I think it's 150 something, but I don't, oh God, the number's over there. It's 127. Yeah, so there's 128 because we're programmers. So there's something missing here, and I don't know if you'll pick up on it until I bring it up. Let me get out of this. So that's all good. I can represent every character that a computer would need, but what if I can bring this up and show you? So this is, yeah, every character we need. Look, it worked. Everything's great. I can, yeah, well, they didn't have JavaScript like this back then, but everything's there. So it's all good. And the American standard code for interchange format, American is the keyword because what if I live in Europe and I don't speak English or I don't, I use other characters? They were like, oh, cool. We'll just map your square brackets to this character that you need. So anytime you press square brackets, which you need for your program to run, you'll get all this ugly garbage over here. So it wasn't really ideal. It worked. Like if you run this, it should work hypothetically, but yeah, it wasn't great. Like imagine that I did a presentation like this and this was actual code and not just an image. And I go and I don't know this, and I go and open up my presentation and I get all this crap in there and everyone's like, that's not JavaScript. What are you talking about? So hypothetically, and it's really hard to find examples of this because the internet wasn't really around, but it should come up with this in the text. And if you run it, it should work because it's just kind of maps your square brackets or your parenthesis to the key itself, which just happens to be this obscure, well, maybe not obscure, but this Danish symbol over here, which as a Danish person, which I'm not, I would need. So yeah, I can do all this coding. I just have to remember, press, I don't know, B in my alphabet and I get a square bracket, not the square bracket button. So it's, yeah. And then, so after ASCII, well, there was extended ASCII, but it's different. It's a different talk. There was Unicode, and they had the very awful task of how do we take every language, put it in a character set for the entire world, and all the symbols. This is the Unicode Consortium, by the way. They had, I'm going to list this for you. They had to do all the possible numbers, numerals, digits, symbols, and letters, which meant that you had to do the Latin alphabet, every other alphabet, characters with modifiers, both separately and together. So you could separate one of the modifiers from a letter. The logographic characters, which is in the Chinese alphabet. The syllabic writing systems, I don't even know what half this stuff is. That shows how dedicated they are, which is in Japanese right to left systems, top to bottom systems, and mathematical symbols, and so on and so forth. We'll actually get there in a second, but there's a lot of stuff in it. There's a lot of planes as well. There's your basic map, which is anything that we would use, and you've got like billions of characters down below. So it's a bit like this. I'll give you like 10 seconds to read it. Just do a I love this laugh to symbolize that you're done. Yeah. Also this, kind of. Imagine if you hired a skywriter and you sent him your text and it had parentheses in it and you get like this weird symbol. So I was like, well, it's not using ASCII, but I found those references to something called UCS2, which was like, how can I put it? Remember the Zune? Yeah, it's like no. Yeah, so you know UCS2. Like, it's like the Zune. No one knows what it is. It was a thing that happened. It's very hard to find information on it. And I was trying to figure out, does JavaScript use this? Because it was mentioned, and it's in the spec exactly like once, but it's in the old specs and not the current one. But it's just anyway. So this guy, and I saw Mozilla and I was like, okay, they're accredited. I use the MDN for looking up JavaScript. They know. This guy knows. It's encoded in UCS2. We're done. But you look in the spec and you search it, and there's nothing there. So what the hell? Something's going on. I don't know what it is. And I did I must have done like 10 different, sit down, is UCS2 in JavaScript? No. Is it in JavaScript? Yes, it's in JavaScript. Or like a debate, it's always been there. It's there at the moment. And yeah, no one seems to know. But these people at, oh God, the spec, the ECMAScript, who love this stuff, they just do it all the time. They actually had an answer that I found just this morning, thankfully enough. So there's different Unicode sets. Let me just check, was I meant to tell you that earlier? Oh yeah, something I should have told you. So the thing with Unicode, which again is all of the characters instead of the shittier ASCII one, is so they can use Unicode or they can use UCS2, and I'm kind of in this weird recursion loop where I have to tell you this one thing before I can explain this thing, and to explain this thing, so I'm just gonna tell you some stuff that won't make sense probably, and then I'll explain it. So between UCS2 and UTF, between the two of them, and I'm getting confused, it's up to the engine itself to determine that. So Google's V8 engine, I don't think anyone else uses any other engines, but that's the main one that's inside Node. Everyone's happy with that. And that uses UTF-8 16, which is probably why we can't find this. Really, really good emoji stuff here as well. Oh shit. So it does use UTF-16, which is like our text thing, but a lot longer. And what that means is you can throw anything at it, you can throw emojis at it, and it will work. So we don't have to care. And that's why you don't know about this, because it just works. But there's some issue because, let's see, it wasn't as big of a deal. But if we want to represent it anyway, UTF-16, we can just give it this. And it works. So let me just illustrate it. I'll show you what I mean. So we can print an emoji normally, but it's not a good idea. And this is essentially what this node emoji thing is doing. Live coding. Wow.
You're not in Node.
Thank you. Wow. Ah, good hot dog. Here's your emoji. Oh no. It's on here. So all of the stuff that I've been mentioning and dumping on you right now is it's this thing. This is UTF-16, and that's great and it works. And there's something else I actually forgot to show you. UTF. Oh no, I'm just playing it up.
Is that the terminal interpreting the character code, or is that Node printing?
That's Node interpreting the Unicode. So you remember before how you had like 42 for A or something like that? That's the equivalent. We went from 128 to this. This like, oh, it's so big. I had a website.
But the terminal decides what the hot dog looks like.
Let me think. No, the Unicode specification does. So
Because your Android shows different emojis to iOS.
yeah, so inside Unicode, there's like this segment which is mapped by this, and it knows when you put in that that it's a hot dog. Like it's an actual hot dog, and there's a thing in it where it says like, oh, you wanted a hot dog. Here's the Apple hot dog, or the Android hot dog, or the Twitter hot dog, and it maps it. And in this case, this is the Apple hot dog. But that's a glyph.
Yeah, it's a font split.
It is, but it wouldn't know what you're telling it until it gets the Unicode. So in the same way that if I send you the letter A, I guess I am sending it to you, but like it knows to represent an A because you're getting /U40 or something like that.
So it's part of the system font, just as the A would be Apple's implementation of an A. That's Apple's implementation of a hot dog image.
Yeah, so I guess that's how font works now that I think about it. The font would just be interpreting the character encoding system. So whereas before you would have like Cyrillic encoding for Russia or whatever, and I would have to change my system to interpret that. This just does every character that exists. So there's a very good chart. Unicode table, here it is. This might better illustrate. So this is Unicode. This is like an actual thing you can look at and say like, oh, that's Unicode. So these are our ASCII things. So I could print out 0012. You can try that if you want, actually. If I can find my mouse. It's that way. So what is it? Oh, yeah, because it's a character with no representation. It's funny. So if you go 62, it should be the letter R. I haven't actually tried this. Close enough. Oh no, yeah, that's correct. It's a lowercase b. So I don't know if that's like, don't quote me on this, but I suppose when you press a key on a keyboard, it's just sending this code, more or less. So we have what they call the primary plane. Yeah, we've got up here. We can search. This is Unicode. This is like every character you would ever need, plus a bunch of stuff that you will never need. So we've got our basic Latin, or English, if you want, and then we get into, and like this is where ASCII stopped, and then we get into our other modifiers and all that, and then you keep going, and it goes a long way. And I can't hit the bottom in the time that I've got, but right down the very bottom, we have emojis. It's on Wikipedia, so no. I think that's one of those things where like they are the same, but it's just like that's probably not the right word. But so here's some basic ones. So if you put in this, you would get a smiley face, and you would get the smiley face on every device with its own interpretation of that. And there's a lot missing because they provide these restricted areas where you can not put anything there ever. And that's so, say I make a phone and I want to put in a bunch of stuff that, you know, that I made myself. I can use the restricted area and it'll never be used because it's not allowed to be used. And then that's how you get all that like wonky stuff where like, why is this on this carrier? Because they stuck it in a place that you can't change. Yeah, so we could, so if we want to console log a smiley face, you'd go 1F6000. 1F6000. Yeah. I think it's too many zeros.
You got sort of less zero.
Yeah.
It's not more because there it's code points actually.
Yeah, so, oh God, I just fell victim to the thing I'm trying to tell you guys about. Yeah, so, so yeah, it doesn't work. Same way that there is a, if I go back to the actual presentation, so there's a single code for this, and I tried this the first time and it was like, I don't know, 6 characters, and it didn't work. And that's because there's this thing where they do supplementary characters, I think it's called, where you split it into 2 separate characters. And when you render it, it becomes a new, well, it just basically like jumps down because UTF-16 knows how to get to the lower planes. So you've got your initial planes, which is like 4 or 5 characters long. And once you go past that, it just doesn't know what to do. So they extended it to 16. But the only way to do it is through these double characters. And the thing that JavaScript used to use, there was like, you can use UTF-16, the longest Unicode thing, or you can use the shittier one, that the Zune of character encodings. And that is exactly the same, but it doesn't support doing this, making it essentially worthless. That was kind of my main point, actually. But I think the main reason they used UTF-16 was because Windows did it. And if for Windows to go back and change it to what was perceived as the better one, then they would have had to basically say we were wrong. So the reason that everything works nicely is because someone at Microsoft, and I'm kind of assuming this, just really didn't want to admit they were wrong. And as much as I don't like Microsoft at times, I guess I thank them for this, that I can send you a hot dog and you know what it is. And I can also show you some fancy new ECMAScript 6 to make it look like I can know how to run Node and console logs. So let's get rid of this. Oh, Jesus Christ, I just hit the, no, I didn't. I thought I hit the power button. So in ECMAScript 6, we have on the string in the prototype, we have this fancy new from character code thing. And what it does is it takes, do you remember the 2 hot dog character? Yeah. So it takes those as hexadecimal. This is probably more than you wanted to know about emojis. Huh, okay. Did I? Oh, okay. No, I missed an 8. That's cool. Yeah. We can also do, they're assigned numbers. So the hot dog is the, one of these is a poo and one's an emoji, hot dog. And I can't remember which one, but I think it's 127789 is the number of the hot dog. So we got this fancy new from code point. And that takes a string, which is weird because it only takes integers, but inside of a string, it should just take an integer. Not, yeah, okay. You got hot dog. So that's probably the planes, because they go all the way down, and then I'm not exactly sure how it joins them, but I guess it references them through like a kind of XY thing. It's probably gone down. It's probably gone across the right amount, but it's probably gone down not enough, and it's given like, I mean, I don't know, I'm just talking out my ass, but like it's probably gone somewhere else in Unicode, and it said, that's what you asked for, and it gave me that. Also got, oh no, it's a robot. I thought it was a poo emoji. Yeah. So the main thing to take away is don't use hyperterm, because it will cause you to research a lot of things that you didn't need to know. As you can see, it works, and I was like back here, and it didn't, and so this happened. Because I use hyperterm, so don't use hyperterm. Oh, I found an issue with them because I ran cat on a PDF, and I said, if you run cat on a PDF, all of your text becomes this, because it like scrambles up the Unicode. And they said to me, why would you ever run cat on a PDF? So, just a fun story. Oh, and I got a bonus I should throw in actually. What else? So, do you know about the spread operator? I learned about this, sadly, through this. I didn't learn it because I wanted to be a better developer. I just wanted to get emojis and do cool stuff with them. Oh, it's because my thing's not full screen. Or it is full screen. What's going on here? I need to get out. Anyway, if you get the spread operator, which is the two brackets. Oh, actually, so they invented this thing called Node, and you can run JavaScript outside of the browser. Except I can't actually. Oh, there we go. So if we get an emoji that's comprised of, it only works on some of these. Let's say a mom, the family with mother and two sons. Yeah. Yeah, get that. To open it. Oh, yeah, Apple option. No, Apple control, you're right. Huh?
They're combining emojis now, right? To make new ones, they just combine old ones together.
Yeah, so you have the mom and two kids. And this is all emojis are. I should have actually just told you this. This is more interesting. Nothing, it's just a hot dog. You think they take this? They're not going to go to this effort. So this is, it looks like nothing, but it's actually a zero-width joiner. I don't know what that is. Like, it just looks like an empty string, but. So this is basically like something that glues these together. And you get this. And it works with the dad and two kids. And it also, I don't know if I should show this one actually. Depends how you interpret it. So if we take any of the yellow skin emojis, no, I'm wrong actually. If we take any of the other skin color emojis, they're just a skin color palette and a yellow emoji. Same with any of them. But there's this thing, I can't remember the name of it. There's a scale this guy invented, and it's like skin tanability on a scale of 1 to 5, and this is like 5. And that's how there's like 1 for everything on that scale. And that's, yeah, it just applies it. I don't know what that looks like. If it just, yeah, I don't know. I should do a talk on that or something.
How come that one doesn't have the joining character?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess because it's probably not joining more than 2. I guess if it's just two, you can just regularly join them. Yeah, so
Can you join them yourself? If you combine
the zero width,
yeah,
I can.
combine other stuff, see what happens.
I can, but last time I did it, it didn't work. No, but it does work. Like, it probably won't do it right the first time, but if you get this and you just do like this plus that plus blah, 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 you'll get.
That's not an empty string, is it? That's some kind of magic character we can't see.
It looks like an empty string, yeah, but it's something. It's probably a Unicode character. No, it is a Unicode character. Yeah. So this is really, oh, here's another one. This one's good. So you know how they say how long's a piece of string? How long's a hot dog? One character, right? 4. 2. Because it's those two UTF strings joined together, and it doesn't know how to go to the. It knows how to go to both of those added together, but it doesn't know how to go to the number, like the 1, 2, 1, 2, 8s and whatever.
That's the problem with other Unicode characters as well. So if you have a string length limit in Twitter or something, and you write in Chinese,
Yeah.
your character count goes all crazy.
Yeah. I made an email thing where it just auto responded with hot dogs. And I had this weird thing where like if you send too many, it just sends into Chinese characters because they start like getting, I don't know, I guess it processes it and it just kind of joins the wrong ones together and it goes off to somewhere else in Unicode.
If you run this on with 2 kids, we get 3 characters.
The mom and 3 kids. Should.
Without the spread off.
You can do the length.
Yeah, the length.
Oh, right, yeah. Sorry. Probably. I mean, we could make it fun and just do like, oh. So this is the other thing with terminals is they kind of don't know, but like if I do that, then it just kind of knows what I'm talking about. Oh, but it's a string. So. Oh. Yeah, this is, yeah. 9.
Yeah, because you get all the special characters. Yeah.
But I also deleted one to make it render them because as soon as you change something in the terminal, it like kind of plays nice. So.
There's also another fun trick is that you can replace in the first
oh,
clip,
yeah,
you
yeah.
can replace email with mail, for example.
Yeah, you could do like
It'll assemble.
yeah, you can do like emoji regex and stuff as well. Like have the 2 dads and 2 kids and run regex to swap out the dad with a mom and you get a mom and 2 kids. Jesus. Yeah. So I'll wrap this up. This has been interesting. So they don't have emojis for these 2 words. So go tweet at Unicode and tell them we need an Ethernet and a salad. I'm on Twitter. I'm here. I'm also like, so they came out with a .shop today. And of course, the first thing I looked up was fart.shop. just because like it's a popular word, right? Like you would pay money to own fart. So I searched poop shop. And then I found out no one owns poop.co.nz. So if you go to poop.co.nz, it will go to my website. But it will give you a security, it'll say it's an invalid certificate because I haven't made one for it. But yeah. Oh. Yeah, I was trying to register the hotdogemoji.com and it's doable. There's a thing called Punycode, which is not Unicode, Punycode, Punycode, because it's small.
That's what the problem didn't allow you to use. So like the first poop emoji, some other LTDs that allow you to use.
Yeah, it's kind of like no one knows. Like half the people don't know it exists. The other half say like, why would you ever use it? There's another half. Well, there's I can't do more than 2 halves, but basically you can use it, but no one knows. They either don't allow it or they just think it's stupid and they ban it. But that actually brings me to another point. Oh, there's nothing bad in there. So if you go to Wikipedia, wikipedia.org and you replace anything with a hamburger, or do something. Oh. It's just a hamburger. It actually works. Like, you do the hot dog, it works. I don't know about the others. Yeah, cool.
The Maui statue? I want to see where that is.
Is that an emoji?
Yeah. But it's not the Maui statue. It's that place in Japan, isn't it? Yeah.
No.
What is it called though? I don't know what it's actually called. Is it Maui?
Like the Easter Island heads,
Yeah,
right?
sorry.
I think it's just called East Island.
Because actually a reference to a place in Japan, not Easter Island.
Yeah. Why? See if there's any others. I can't think of anything else at the top of my head, but yeah, it's probably more than you needed to know. Yeah, that's it.
Time for a few questions. The invite to this meetup, I didn't go to the Smartly class on Android. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. I don't remember. I didn't do the. You might know.
There's emoji for Node, and it's Sparkles, Rocket, Turtle, Sparkles.
Oh,
That's
right.
the official Node emoji string. That's what it was. I think that's what I put on most things. I don't know.
Actually, now that I think of it, I don't know what happens if there's an emoji that is in Unicode and they haven't done a custom character for it. Like, because if you remember, there's like smiley face and all that, which comes through, but I don't know about the others. Maybe that's something.
Not square.
Oh yeah, you used to have the square with the question mark. That's right.
I don't know if this is a pretty spot. I've always wondered what the Astral plane is.
The
Astral plane.
Astral plane. Oh, so you remember how I kept scrolling forever? So there's 16 planes of Unicode, I think. There's the first primary plane, which is the, like, why would you ever need anything else more than ASCII head and like my own language symbols. And then there's the other planes, which is like mathematical symbols, Greek letters, Roman numerals, blah, blah, blah. So there's the one primary plane, and then there's the 15 supplementary planes, which I guess is the astral planes. I don't. Oh, probably. Probably it's so far because it's all like characters you would never use.
Cool, got time for one more question. Is there any? We're going to have a 2-minute break. So grab a drink if there's any bits that doesn't eat it. Then we'll jump back here and we've also got an optional third speaker. Kev's put his hand up, so I'll ask around once Jamie's finished because Jamie could take 1 hour or 15 minutes. We don't know yet.
Yeah, do you want me to use the right, no. Someone said that that's
right. I don't know, you've got a pretty booming voice.
Yeah.
It's far more it's really hard to technical depth and how through the moment that we take a journey to try to understand completely different to how like it's a good leverage to start take care of it.
It's both.
Doesn't work. So I assume I just like that.
Wiry thing to.
Is that two? Yeah, right. Hello, everybody at home. Also, there's like a pointer on this. Yeah. That's mine.
It's this one here. So the dead door and that you go through. Oh no, that was goodness thing. With control.
Cool. So I want to point out that toilets are past the kitchen to the left. If that's people asking, I forgot to say it at the start. Sorry. Once again, big shout out to TradeMe for sponsoring, for hosting us here. And Catalyst for sponsoring the meetup as a whole. Catalyst are always hiring JavaScript developers, Node developers. So if you're looking for a place to work, it's awesome and it's open source. And just owns that space. Definitely check out Catalyst. So now we have Jamie. Kick it off.
Woo! So a bit of a disclaimer. This is more about my journey of working out how to do D3 and React. So the code samples might not be great code. If you look at it and think, oh my God, why did he do that? There's probably a good reason. Most of this code is actually running in production now. So if you spot anything like horrifically bad, maybe let me know. So Alex tweeted that, this talk was going to be on, and someone asked him, how would you go about D3 and React? And he replied with, I use it for its maths and its other utils, and React for the rendering. So that's actually what I'm going to talk about. So that's the TLDR of my entire conversation. What I do want to cover is how I got here and why we spent so much time focusing on this. So I started for a company called Endgame in 2010. It's a boutique software house that does services work for anything from port management, health management software, smart fridges, a bunch of really cool products. If anyone is looking for development jobs, they are always hiring. About 3 years into that, in 2013, myself, Andrew Butel, who was the CEO of Endgame, and Owen Evans, who is usually much more involved in these than I am, started Hoist. And Hoist was a microservices platform with the goal of solving the issue of where do you put your integration logic. If you're building an app and you want your users to be able to export their data to Salesforce, any kind of integration logic in your software, we were the place to host it. We do your authentication, a lot of that stuff. That's not really relevant to the talk, but as soon as I tell people that I was the CEO of Hoist, they go, yeah, what did that thing do again? So there's a brief overview of what we were working on. This is Hoist. We were a team of about 7 for a lot of the life of the company, but in the last 6 months, it was just myself, Owen, and our designer, Helen, working full-time on the company. I was doing a lot of traveling and trying to raise money and all of the less interesting parts of running a startup, but I was also the front-end developer. Owen is a fantastic engineer, but he hated front-end. He really hated touching HTML and CSS and got really dark when I made him do it. So we devised a strategy when we moved over to React where we would split the UI components completely out of the web application and create a library that a developer could come along and use and just say, I want a modal with a button and some text fields, and the React component should work out what that was going to look like. So this entire UI was built using what we called Hoist UI. If there was anything slightly out of the ordinary, I would work on that, but most of the time Owen could work off that library. Then in the last 6 months, we were building Hoist for sales to large organizations. And up until that point, we'd been running everything through SSH commands and seeing how healthy the servers were, but you can't really sell into an enterprise organization and say, that's how you manage the stack. So we had to build this guy. The first cut of it worked perfectly well, but the one thing we didn't have was charts. So I went digging around to find what charting libraries I liked the most. I have a design background, so charting libraries looking good generally holds a lot more sway with me over how good it is. And so I ended up on chart.js because I really liked the default look of the charts. So we're using React. I thought, hey, I don't know if this is going to be big enough for that, but I can upload my slides. All I wanted to do was ram chart.js into a React component. I didn't care too much about what it did because we only had the one use case. So on the mount of the React component, we find the canvas. That was something that would happen in the first step of loading the chart anyway. There's a draw method to go and draw the chart. That's kind of in the sample docs for chart.js. And in the component that update, it knew that all I was doing with these charts was animating them left every time a data point came in. So I knew to take the last bit of data and edit and animate it. It worked fine for what we were doing, but it was really clear that that is terrible. That is a really bad bit of code. It really only works for one use case, and it's not going to work for anything else. This was about the time that Hoist wrapped up. So we closed the company in about April, midway through development of this. And I moved back to Endgame, the company that I'd been working for before that. They'd been using React as well. A lot of us started using React because we were kind of working quite closely with the Endgame group. The reason we wanted to use it was because it was meant to be good for teams and it was meant to be good for reusability. The reusability part we really struggled to really execute well. Every time a developer created a new data grid or imported a new data grid from a library, it just wouldn't seem to be compatible with the next app we built. And Endgame over the last 6 years has done kind of 30 major products for external companies. So about the same time we were developing Hoist UI, they started working on Rocket, which was their component library for the developers to just pull in and do whatever with. Their manifesto to create a collection of components built to standardize the development of user interfaces and streamline the information design layer. So it was also a little bit material designy, saying that apps should stop looking so different and look a little bit more homogeneous. And my first job was to create this chart. most of the, so the UI behind, most of that worked with the existing Rocket components, but there was no charting. So the goals I had to achieve with starting to work on these charts, it was really clear that you had to be able to put a chart into your application without reading too much documentation. The goal is, if it's a line chart, the component should probably be called line chart, and it should probably just work. Fully composable. Keynote and everything tells me composable is not a word. I think it is. I think it makes sense. And the developer should never touch the CSS, the HTML. The composable part is that, I mean, looking at that design, that chart is very specific to this application. Most of the other charts in the applications won't look like this, but they need to be constructed from this library relatively easily. I talked to our tester at Endgame about what he thought was the best route forward for what charting library we should use, and he told me to look at D3. And I'd come across D3 a lot. I had seen these pages and these pages. And my experience had really just been fluffing around with the variables and changing some numbers until the chart did what I wanted it to do, and not really thinking about what D3 did. It just worked, and what did I care? But the more I looked at this, the more I, after kind of worrying about like, this is just insane, I started to break down so that specific line chart, what the code was that was running that chart. Breaking it down really quickly, the top of the page was just some size settings. There was a function that was formatting date data as it came in. There were some awesome D3 kind of maths functions that were helping to generate the lines and the axes of the chart itself. This great function which returns an SVG path. And then some very jQuery looking bits of, you know, select this, change the property on this, update this thing. Essentially an AJAX request to get some data. Updating your axes to say that there is a min and a max of the data sets that you're using. And then just dumping all of that in the SVG. So breaking it up, there's actually, once I kind of got my head around what these functions were doing, I could ignore the standard JavaScript ones because they were going to change straight away being in a React component. The ones in, what color? Light pink are very jQuery-esque. It's a different way than React works, but it's a kind of a concept I know well enough, having used jQuery a lot. And then the bits in blue were really the bits of D3 that I was most interested. They were the bits that I actually wanted to use. So I found, while I was going through all of this, I was trying to get my head around how React works one way and D3 works another. I assume most people have played with React a little bit. If not, you probably work for a company that likes their tools to be out of beta before putting them into production. We're not one of those. But I found this drawing of, in my notebook, of how in my head I rationalized the two stacks of how it worked. On the left was React. The store would send the information through to a component. It would then render out to the HTML. And in D3, it would hit those maths functions and then render down to the HTML. And when something changed in the HTML, it would go back to the maths and update the maths it was using. The more I look at this, the more this makes probably no sense to anyone but me, but this was how I got my head around it. This is where I started with. And when I combine them, I realized that there's actually not that much difference apart from the bit where it's directly updating the HTML. That's really not that helpful. So doing some Googling about D3 and React, I came across something called React Faux DOM. It was a library that instead of creating the SVG element using D3 and injecting it into the page, all you did was dump the entire D3 chart into your render method. You created the SVG element using React Faux DOM, and then when it came to the actual render, you did a toReact on that. And that kind of got me to a point where I had a line chart that I could send some data to and it would render. It's actually, if you're doing something really simple and really one-off, the React DOM library is not that bad. But it's quite slow a lot of the time. You sit there going, oh, it's still rendering. I wonder what I did wrong. And it also wasn't composable. This was a very specific way to build a chart. So going back to my chart, it's quite a complex chart for a developer to create without it kind of being pre-built for them. We can get rid of the top buttons because they were going to sit outside the component anyway, as well as the left and right arrows. But this is essentially all of the different parts that were in that chart. And I wanted the developer to be able to say, well, I've got grid lines, so put in some grid lines. I've got a data line, so put in a data line. Not worrying about how they worked, just whacking in the components. Because, as I said, it has to be fully composable. So I started to break out the maths from the rendering. And mostly it worked out that a lot of the maths functions that were going on in D3 were specific to a line chart, a bar chart, a pie chart, but the elements below a lot of the time didn't care what was happening in that top element. So it was possible to create a way of composing these charts by letting a developer do whatever they wanted. I mean, if they really wanted to put a line inside a bar chart, they could put the line in and it would at least get the right maths. It might look terrible, but it kind of was all, they could do whatever they want. And that chart, the chart that I was trying to build, ended up looking like this. When I got to this point, I actually started with this code. It's a little bit different, but I wrote this code out and said, this is actually how I want it to work. This is what I want the developer to say. I want a line chart. I want a grid, a line, the gradient that actually sits behind the numbers, and then the axis information on top of everything. So this was the kind of finished basic bit of the line chart with a few bits cut out. So there's a method called axis setup, which creates the X and Y axes. That was different based on each chart type. A loop that looked for all of the children and looked for the data set, because if I go back, this one, it was important that each element could contain its own data set. One of the requirements for this chart was maybe later we'll put a min and max line on top of that, so the data will be different. So this function looped through all of those children and kind of combined all of the data sets, and then was able to say, give me the min and max of those combined data sets. But all it did in the end was attach those to an object that was then returned in the render method. So every time it got new props, it would update those objects, it would re-render the chart, and it would send all of the properties and that axis information into the components, so the line chart, the gradient. Some of the components really didn't care what it was getting. Drawing a gradient in SVG is really easy, and this, while it's not customizable by color or anything like that, it was very easy to just write the SVG and let it render it out. The line was quite similar in that if you didn't want to animate it, all you need to do is call the method that you've created that's going to generate your line, your SVG line, and it can go straight into the D attribute of your path. It works everything out for you. It'll render it perfectly. Yeah. We also wanted it to animate. So I've got scope in there. What that did was say you've got a month of data and you want it to focus in on a week, and then you press the right scroll button and it animates to the next step. D3 handles a lot of that animation for you, but the downside of that is you can't put the creation of the SVG straight into the render method, because it will update your component before D3 gets a chance to handle the animation. So at this point, this is messier than I would like it to be. But when a component is updated, it then doesn't need to render anything inside here. This is just purely the path definitions for D3 to attach to, and then it runs an animation. The animation level is set to 0 if it's for the first time, so it just dumps it there. Or you can add a duration to it and it will animate around the place. I was surprised at how quickly this just worked. As soon as I was referencing elements within my own React components, it just seemed to animate and load, and I've yet to have many issues with it. So that is my journey of React and D3. There's a lot to go on it, so I am definitely interested to hear from people who have done some of this stuff before. And are there any questions?
Have you done much with SVGs before this? Because whenever I look at D3, I go, fuck, SVG, I don't know what's going on.
Yeah, so we built our own charting library at Endgame back in 2010 because we wanted something that could render in PDFs just as well as it could render online, and really all that was out at the time was, I think it was high charts maybe, and it was quite bad. So we did this really weird kludge of server-side generated SVG that was then parsed to the browser, which then went into Raphael because you couldn't put SVG straight into the browser then. It had to parse it and then draw it back out. So even today, some of the devs at Endgame will say, oh, so I tried to use Moxie charts to do a line chart and it inverted this axis and I can't work out why. And we just go, good luck. But so that had really been my experience with it. It's quite simple. I've definitely found, I don't know if the dev tools in Chrome, I'm sure was around then in 2010, I'm not sure. But the dev tools now make it so much easier to work with SVG. Once you're using D3, it dumps everything into the browser. You can inspect everything, edit it, get your head around what those changes mean. I definitely felt more like I was flying blind when we did it last time. Yeah.
Similar question. Did you consider not using D3 for any of the rendering, and instead just because I mean at the end of the day D3 is just doing SVG anyway.
Yeah.
And just using it for the scaling and that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean most of the components kind of do that. They handle their own rendering, all that kind of stuff. The animation really was the area that it made it so much easier to not have to calculate the animation of the path in the SVG itself. But that's probably that is really the only area that I like SVG for rendering. The rest of it was kind of a pain. So yeah, I'm not sure. It's one of these things you don't think till you have done it. But I'm sure someone's probably created a version of D3 that doesn't have any rendering in it and just has the maths and makes it more lightweight. Yeah.
It's a lot more modular.
Yeah.
Because I know I did a very similar thing in my most recent project.
Yeah.
And I didn't use I used D3. I used D3 for all the axis and all that sort of thing. You know, the scale, that was the big thing. And
yeah. Yeah, I definitely learned very quickly that they've released a new version of D3 because it broke all documentation links on the internet. So any D3 doc link you hit takes you to this page saying, the docs have moved, which was infuriating.
Oh, one more question. All right, and the post for Jamie.
Thank you.
Take a 2-minute break to get set up, so feel free to grab another beverage.
So what do you have? Matt?
Yes.
Let's just go straight in. Oh, it's nice when everyone uses the same
So the change to YouTube Live, nothing's changed. It's like start YouTube Live. So would you like to start Google Hangouts? Yeah, it just takes you back to
It's him as a tweet disclaimer going, but just so you know, you're going live on the internet. So no one could be recording you. You own none of your material.
So is there a link or something I need to go to?
We're just going to use chat.
Oh, okay, sweet.
Put this guy in your pocket.
Yep.
That guy on you.
Yep.
Just check this out.
You can see me now bouncing my computer off the floor.
All right.
Cool.
And do you need the?
So the bonus of this is it just gets converted to a big YouTube video.
Oh.
So I don't need to go to the Hangout site or whatever the hell it's called now? Yeah, probably not. I got the slides out there anyway, so. Yep, sweet, okay. Yeah, I don't actually have a lot of code to share, which is good. And if I do, it's kind of not the point, so.
Do you want a drink?
No, I'm good. I've had so much to drink already, it's all right. Maybe 15 minutes. It's not a real long talk. It depends. I'm fairly interactive, so if people have questions during the talk, we can stretch it out. But yeah. So.
One thing that would be good is if you repeat the question.
Yeah. Cool. No worries. Awesome. Yep.
So we're going to kick it into the last talk. As I said before, we've got Kev Bryson from Auckland, who runs the Node.js meetup. Come down to Wellington for, is it today or tomorrow?
It was from Friday till tomorrow.
So he's popped into the meetup and he's going to get to talk.
Cool. All right. Thank y'all very much for having me. I ain't originally from Auckland, just in case you pick up a little bit of strange accent. So yeah, my talk is full stack JavaScript. So who am I? I have been for the last year plus the lead web engineer at InSpark Technology. I'm the co-organizer of the Auckland Node.js meetup. I'm the co-organizer of the Auckland JavaScript meetup. And I'm a general committee member for the JavaScript Society of New Zealand. I really like JavaScript. Okay, I'm going to get that out there right now. I really like JavaScript. So yeah. And any talk I give, I have to give this warning. These are my opinions. I don't try to say it's fact. But I may say something that offends you. If it's about code, I shouldn't say anything that offends you personally. But yeah, I may make you question your technical choices. So yeah, a little over a year ago, I had a new project. And now every developer loves greenfield projects. I get to make all the technical debt. You know, I get to make the decisions. I don't have to worry about what some cat 5 years ago decided that now makes my life a living hell. I get to do that. Hopefully in 5 years, somebody else can cuss me out. So what do I use? Okay, now I said I like JavaScript, but the thing is I have to justify this. As a startup, we don't have a lot of money. Every decision I make has to be justified. I just can't go, it's because it's my idea and it's what I want to do. So, you know, .NET, it's extremely common, I know, incredibly overly common in Auckland, pretty big in New Zealand, and in Wellington as well, entirely too big in New Zealand, in fact. Yeah, and that was the general reaction because most of the rest of the world don't use it. Well, that's not completely true, but yeah, I have strong opinions that are very anti.NET, and I'm just going to leave it at that. So, and also, it's difficult to find .NET developers in the US. Everybody likes to think outside the valley. It's not that way, but really, unless you are on in the Seattle area, .NET just isn't that big. And the startup, it was for a company in the US. I need to say that as well. I was the lone overseas developer at the time, so it was that was something to consider. Something on the JVM? Yeah, no. Now there are a few JVM languages I like, but again, just wasn't going to be an option. PHP. No, really. I mean, PHP is not terrible. I would rather, and out of the choices that I've shown, PHP was the choice of those previous ones, and probably would have been my choice otherwise. But then I looked at Node.js. And, you know, let's be honest here, it's not that big of a shock. But admittedly, Node.js is growing. It's got a lot of enterprises using it now. It's not just for, you know, it's not just the hipsters using it. You've got very large companies in the US using it now and overseas. So, I mean, it wasn't a big risk. And let's face it, there are plenty of devs out there that know JavaScript. In fact, that was, so I had to say why. Context switching. I was the only developer doing this project. We had a mobile developer, and then we hired another mobile developer, and then a junior developer, all of the mobile stuff. But I was the only one doing the entire web platform, which was having to do everything that mobile did and then some. So I had easier context switching. I like dynamic languages. I think that you are more productive in a dynamic language. I'll have words with other people otherwise. There's less code to write in a dynamic language. Again, it's about getting to market. It's about ease of use for the developer at this stage. I don't have to write left-hand, right-hand code. It just made lots of sense for me. I know JavaScript. And lots of other developers know JavaScript. I could, you know, if I'm looking, if I could grow my team, I'm going to find a developer that's going to know JavaScript a lot easier than I'm going to find a developer that knows Scala or C# or some other language like that. You know, I get to pick more for what I need. So, okay, I've said I'm going to make a Node app. So now, you know, that doesn't narrow anything down. You know, it helps a little bit, but there's still so many aspects about true web application that you need to consider. You know, well, first off, who does front-end only development? Okay, one person does front-end only. Who does, so the rest of you, I'm assuming, write some back-end code. Who writes .NET back-end code? Okay, there's a few of you. Fair enough. I've been there, done that. Who works on a JVM background, back-end language? Okay. PHP. A few more. Okay, yeah. Python. Okay. So that covers most of you. You know, but you don't know. It's not just the language. You've got to have something that's going to talk to some sort of data store somewhere. Something that's going to serve up a web page. So there's lots of things to consider, and you know, a lot of developers, you know, I've got to make a decision. That's the worst thing ever. I personally enjoy that sort of thing. Making decisions is not a bad thing, but they have to be made. First off, web framework. You know, because you can't. I mean, I could create an HTTP server in Node and do it all myself, but that would be stupid and a waste of company time. So I've got options, and I want to make the right decision. Express, it's the big dog. It's the one a lot of companies are using. There's frameworks built off of Express. There's Happy.js. Again, it's a big framework. It's a battle-tested. Walmart use it for their e-commerce solution. So, you know, I know it can handle a lot of things. There's Restify. That's, again, battle-tested. That's what Netflix use in the US. And that's how they serve all their APIs. And there's a bunch of frameworks built on top of Express. I chose Express because, again, I knew it is the big dog out there. And it's just serving, you know, HTTP requests. So that's the sort of thing, is I already know about it. It's simple. That was the easiest decision. Now here, database is not really necessarily a node-based decision at this point. I had a MySQL database. and I also had a MongoDB data store as well for some other stuff. So those were, the MySQL was made for me, but I have a lot of relational data, and it's a lot easier to do reporting off of relational data than it is any type of NoSQL or document database. So those were made for me, so that then led me to data access data. Because you have to get your data out of the database. And while I could, again, you can use, the drivers down. I could write, straight MySQL and write straight raw SQL all the time. I don't want to do that. I don't want other developers doing that, because that's, bugs can lie in there, security vulnerabilities. The more direct SQL you're trying to write and then send in the database, you've got a chance you can get some security issues there. So I chose Connects, which is a wrapper around the SQL, MySQL, or all the other ones as well. You can use MySQL, Postgres, Oracle, SQL Server, and SQLite. I chose Connects. Supported promises. Frameworks were built on top of it as well. It was fairly simple, and you can construct a query without actually putting in raw SQL, but you can also pass in raw SQL, because there's sometimes where you've got to write SQL. So, and also database migrations, because you've got a database. It's not ever set in stone. It's going to move forward. And again, I'm going to write all this. I could write my database migrations all in pure SQL all the time, and I'd be a very sad person. That's not what I want to do. Data seeding, so I can pump the database full of data for testing purposes and just not worry about it. And it lets me do direct querying, like I said. This is what a migration looks like. Here I am just creating a schema. And again, you see, it's just JavaScript. This is not rocket science. It's not out there doing crazy things. It's simple syntax. Anybody looks at it, you'll go, well, I kind of get that. That's not a problem. So yeah, and this is here. What is this doing? Sorry. And this is just generating a user. So this is, I can't actually see it. Let me see if I can scroll up. Where's that screen at? Okay, sorry. Yeah, this is what they're doing here. This is a seed. Oh, sorry. Where I'm just inserting a user. So here I've got, ignore all the other stuff. My apologies. Here I'm just inserting that one object that I used to generate that function. So it's quite a simple code. I made it overly complex because I just pretty much copy and pasted some seed code I'd already written. So yeah, that's what it boils down to if I want to select. So it'll also help do things like help prevent you from getting SQL injection attacks and that sort of thing. So again, and occasionally I use an ORM. It's not something that's a real big thing, but I chose Bookshelf because, again, Bookshelf was written by the same people that wrote Connects. Sometimes it makes things simpler, particularly for simple queries or inserting data. There's plenty of ones out there. It's and here I have just created an object. Again, if you've used ORMs in pretty much any language, there's nothing special about that. One of the other benefits, and again, the data access is probably the most boringest bit about the whole thing. My apologies. Server rendering with ease. Now, I'm going to have a rich front end. That's just a given in this day and age. It's a web application. It's not a website. I want a server render though, because I don't know if I've got the product was a doctor's portal, so a doctor could log in and see their patient data. And they could do it on an iPad or even their phone if they so choose. So it's a matter of you want to give them nice, fast rendering experiences, because I don't want to serve down 2-3 mega JavaScript before they actually see anything. I want to render it nice, fast, and quick so they can get going. It's really easy to do in Node. And I was using React because, again, I wanted server rendering. That was as important as writing the code on the front end. I wanted it to work on the back end as well. And I didn't want to have to write it twice. Again, I'm one developer. I'm writing out an entire platform. I have to do it quick. React was the way to do it. And that's pretty simple. I mean, again, I'm using Node.js X here. just the DOM server and render to string, and you get it. There's a few other things you'd want to do if you're going to use React Router, and you're using all of that. But again, I think I probably added less than 15 lines for my entire server rendering stack. So again, I could get really good, my HTML rendered down to the client without having to worry about sending down JavaScript to a small, underpowered device. I could get it going right away. And that's a lot easier to do on Node than I've seen on any other platform, which is, again, one of the biggest benefits of using Node. Even if you are using something, even if your company is using something, your stack is different, you can still have your front end rendered via Node, and you can get those benefits from it. You need a little bit more than just that React DOM. I used ISO, which helped hydrate some of my stores. Great, I've got an app. What do I do with it? And again, I've done a lot of DevOps in my day. I should say ops, because it wasn't necessarily DevOps. I can do, I know how to do deploys. I just, put it on a server and forget about it. We know that's not how it works. I want to basically commit to my repo. Once something's pushed to master, I want it to go deploy on one of my servers and be done with it. And I have to set this up. And again, I don't have all day. I've got all these other tasks. So I want to do it in JavaScript. There's a library called shipit.js, and that let me automate all of my deployments to all of my servers. That handles talking to a tool that I'll mention later to have the server set up and running. It handled pulling down. It handled from source. It handled any SSH commands that I needed to have done. And I got to do it all with a little bit of JSON configuration in JavaScript. And then I could write a little bit of code that sent Slack notifications that did a deploy and that sort of thing. Just a simple, and does npm tasks, so I can do npm installs, npm additional scripts, and that sort of thing. And again, this is a very simple configuration. And that was it. You just would have different environments down here for staging. Creates workspace deployment. It would I could actually have multiple deploys on a server, so I could have one version, and I'd have up to 6 versions, so I could roll back if required. And those are all built into the shipit. So it was just a matter of running a few commands from the continuous integration server. And again, it's configuration. It's, again, I'm talking, the problems were, I was under-resourced with this. I had to do it all, so it all made the most sense to have me do it. Now, hey, it's on the server now. What does it mean? There's a number of options to keep your server up and going. I chose PM2, which stands for the Process Manager or Management for Node. It's lots of options you have. You can pass it a JSON configuration file, which is really simple. Can be quite a simple file, and it'll keep your app up forever. Because if you crash, you don't want it to stay crashed. The last thing you want to do is serve an error page because something else somewhere down the line broke. It'll keep it restarted. You can have multiple instances of your app running. I was using a load balancing where I'd have up to 4 to 6 instances of my application running, and using Nginx, which is probably the one place that I didn't use JavaScript, was just Nginx configuration to handle the load balancing. So there's lots of things that you can do. There's lots of plugins. They have plugins that you can use for PM2 that'll actually show you server usage and that sort of thing and give you a nice graphical UI. I just had it on the server and would occasionally log in and SSH in to my AWS instances and have a look. But yeah, so again, it's just simple configuration. You set some variables, you tell it what to do, and it's good to go. And again, this made my life so much easier. Again, I didn't have to worry about managing lots of different things and lots of different frameworks and tools in other languages. But you've got an app. You've got it running great. How do you know it works? You can do Selenium testing. Anybody ever done any Selenium style testing? Yep. There's language drivers for every language out there. And I wrote my first one in Ruby. That was automated testing. But again, one person one more person writing the test. I want peace of mind when I do a deployment. So I want to write some JavaScript that's going to test my server. Again, this just goes in Google's and test something. But that's the gist of things. You tell it to wait till something's visible. You can set values in different text boxes, and you're good to go. I have had an NPM task that would fire off to a hosted service that would run my Nightwatch code and hit my website every time I did a deploy. So I knew that I had certain tasks that I knew never wanted to break. I wanted to create users, log in, make sure everything was where it was supposed to be. So every time I did a deploy, and I didn't have testers. So again, just me. Every time I did a deploy, I knew it was well tested. And I could go, I shouldn't say well tested. I knew it was at peace of mind. We weren't going to lose a user before they signed up. And other things that you can do, and then it was for the mobile apps. Originally, we were using Parse. About a month before we went live, Parse said, hey, we're closing up, which was pretty frightening when you're a month out from going to production, you're going live. But they said, hey, we're going to give it away open source. So I was like, oh, great, yet another thing I have to manage, not the mobile devs. So again, it was really simple to set up a server and throw this out. There was a Node app. It was really easy. I knew everything about how to get it going and had it going within a day, having our own staging and production servers. The hardest part about it was configuring Mongo, which wasn't that difficult until I got the AWS build. And then I was actually working on a mobile app with React Native. So again, I was writing JavaScript, I was writing the things that I knew. I was able to take what I'd learned, and I was writing a mobile app. And I'm a web developer, happily a web developer at that. So yeah. So the tools that I used: Express, Passport, Connects, Bookshelf, Bcrypt, because you don't ever store your passwords in plain text. Babel, React Router, ISO, class names, D3, SVG line, because sometimes D3 was a little much. I didn't actually use D3 for rendering. I used it for all of the scale and that sort of thing, though, because there was lots of charts involved. So yes. So thanks. That's me. I am available for hire because as startups go, we ran out of money before we ran out of things to do. So thank you. Thank you, Alex. Yeah, anybody have any questions? Sorry, I went through that pretty fast. Yep. Yes, I have posted the slides online a number of times. Not that I know of. Yeah, I mean, it's not an uncommon stack. I mean, like I said, I don't know if it ever made rounds with anybody else. But no, I did post it a couple of times. So yeah, it's not, yeah. I've done both. So yeah. Yeah, until I tried to do an upgrade. Every time you upgrade it, it's a pain in the ass, but yeah. It's getting better. Yep. Yep. I had a build server. I had a Jenkins server running, and I used Jenkins because we had the resources on AWS, and I needed to also build Android. So I just set up Jenkins and had multiple tasks, and one of the tasks was deployment.
Any other questions? Did you look at Docker to help you?
I did, and I'd used it in some for my local development. Again, not enough time in the day. That's what it comes down to. I did all of that, and then some. I mean, that doesn't actually cover the scope that I had to do for the past year. That was just one of the core apps that I wrote. So yeah, I did consider it, and if I had more time or more resources, I would have looked at it harder. Yeah.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's it. If any of you want to give talks, come and talk to myself or over there.
Thanks to Anna for helping out and set up the meetup. Gareth, thanks for helping invite people in. And please make sure you sign out on my app. Otherwise we get in trouble. I might be able to host it again. That's it. Thanks for coming. Okay, we can do that. Sure. Shout out. I don't know Catalyst are hiring as sponsors this meeting, so Catalyst. Anyone else? For jobs. Cool. Short JavaScript contract. What's your name? Chris. Chris. I can talk to Chris. Is anyone looking for work here? Oh wow. Awesome. Go see Gareth. All right. Thanks for coming. Hope to see you next time.